For the next 20 minutes or so, I welcome you to my world as a person living with Alzheimer's, an advocate for Alzheimer's, a retired business person, a believer in self-management, a communicator, and an observer of the world where there is much stigma around dementia, and where there is definitely a stereotype of a person living with dementia. For those in the room who expect to talk on botany and the morning glory flower, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Actually, the flower I am most attracted to is the forget-me-not, the flower of the Alzheimer's societies throughout Canada. But that discussion is for another conference. In the meantime, I have to tell you that I do not have an affiliation, financial or otherwise, with a pharmaceutical, medical device, or communications organization, and I cannot identify any conflict of interest. Over these next few days, we will be surrounded by many researchers and professionals providing insight into their research. Needless to say, I am humbled to be here in front of you. But not to be outdone, I have been conducting my own research, and today I will discuss my initial findings, because at this point, my research doesn't have an end date. My presentation, however, won't be including hypotheses or graphs, because there aren't any. In fact, I don't have an advisor or any other forum to present my findings. You see, my presentation uses the word research loosely and is really based on anecdotal evidence, personal observation, and experience. That's right, mine is lived experience research, which some of you may also be conducting. It's powerful and far-reaching research that for me leads to advocacy and hopefully making a difference. Like wearing this lanyard with the Alzheimer's Society's card that reads, "Please be patient. I have Alzheimer's disease." I wear it to engage. If someone wants to talk to me about Alzheimer's, or if someone has a question, ask me. Talk to me. Because, quite frankly, there isn't enough of that happening around the subject of Alzheimer's or related dementias. By not talking about it, dementia doesn't go away. If we don't ask questions about it, we won't get answers, and the stigma won't change, and the stereotype will continue. Let me illustrate. We meet for the first time. I introduce myself. My name is Jim Mann. I live in the Vancouver area. I'm 67 years old, as of a couple of weeks ago, and I have Alzheimer's. What do you see? Who do you see? What's your focus? Do you zero in on my Alzheimer's as you look at me? Do you immediately think my cognitive abilities are too limited that I could have anything meaningful to say? Will you speak to Alice, my wife, right away looking for answers and ignore me? Do you even think I will be able to respond to you? Some will see me as a fully functioning person to the extent they will say, "I don't have Alzheimer's." In fact, I had one medical professional tell me that after seeing me on a panel, he knew I didn't have Alzheimer's. How did he know that? Look at how well I'm dressed. So, now you see, with this one disease, you get the full range of people. From being written off as soon as you are diagnosed, to being challenged on the legitimacy of your diagnosis. My mother had dementia, and through her I learned about the stigma around dementia when other ladies at the dining table at the independent facility lost patience with her and asked that she be moved. They didn't like being asked the same question or hearing the same story, meal after meal. Sometimes when I was there, I could see a resident whisper to another about something my mother was doing or had done. Her diagnosis led me to better understand that we need to increase awareness of Alzheimer's and related dementias. For example, not everyone with a dementia is in their early 90s and in the final stages of the disease. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the field of medicine, personal care workers, the public at large, still think that to be the case. In a hospital emergency room on one occasion with my mother, I was standing by her bed when a nurse approached her for a situational update. I was asked to leave. When I suggested that because of my mother's dementia, it might be best if I stayed to assist with answering questions more accurately, I was, for all intents and purposes, told to leave. The impression I had was the nurse questioned my integrity when I had the temerity to suggest my mother wasn't entirely capable. For me, looking back, the nurse made assumptions. Did my mother look like she had it together? Yes, she did. Was my mother speaking well and giving the impression she was in control? She sure did, and that was good enough for the nurse. So, while I may applaud the nurse for not making automatic assumptions about my mother's cognitive ability, I question her judgment in not listening to me, her son, her care partner, along with my wife Alice. There's an expression. Looks can be deceiving. Mom's nurse may have learned that, and my own actions reinforce it. I can sound like I know what I'm talking about and speak convincingly on some things, but often, especially in company, I would be glad my wife is with me because it will turn out I am 100% incorrect. I hope you caught what I just said. Some things. I'm not always wrong. So now, with this knowledge gained through being my mother's care partner and with my own lived experience, I am confident in speaking up and speaking out, being a self-advocate. And that's a big reason why I get the concept of social citizenship, that life can be lived positively and well after a dementia diagnosis, that I have a voice, a legitimate voice, through which I can participate in life's daily routines personally and in the community. What do I mean? I write letters to the editor that get published. I'm a full voting member of the Alzheimer Society of Canada Board and was a member of the Alzheimer Society of British Columbia Board for the full 6-year term. I have appeared on behalf of the Alzheimer Society before the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance in Ottawa and the Select Standing Committee on Finance here in BC. I take my role seriously to make a contribution, to make a difference. But let's be honest, it gives me a purpose. It permits me to have and maintain a meaningful role in life, to be a full participant and not just an observer. It lets me use the communications and advocacy skills I honed throughout my career. Living with Alzheimer's, I have a best before date. But before I reach that date, I don't want to languish. I have a voice, and I need to use it. These are all illustrations of the true meaning of social citizenship, the idea that I am not content to sit on the sidelines, that I have a voice, my own voice. This is, however, a double-edged sword when you have dementia. You see, physically, I look good, but you don't see me disoriented. You don't see me asking for or needing assistance. Really? You look fine. And by itself, this isn't a sentence to take exception to, especially if it had been said by a friend or an acquaintance. Unfortunately, the person who told me I looked fine was a senior nurse at a hospital's emergency room. I say unfortunately because she wasn't telling me I looked healthy. She was responding to my statement that I have Alzheimer's and needed Alice to be with me in the examining room. I tell you this to illustrate why I advocate to educate, to challenge people's perceptions of Alzheimer's and related dementias. So incidents like what happened in emergency don't have to happen. Let it be acknowledged that I am not old and frail. Let people know I am living well with Alzheimer's. And as for communicating, sometimes you can't shut me up. I'm always ready to engage an individual or a group. I do this because for many, I am the first person with dementia they've met. I do it too because some may only know a person with dementia in the final stages, and they need to be reminded of the early stages of this disease when functioning and capable are key words. I believe in the 6 degrees of separation, so educating one person in this way, I believe, resonates beyond the one to the many. In my first formal speech after my diagnosis, in the fall of 2008, I said, and I quote, "As persons with Alzheimer's or related dementias, and as care partners, our voices are necessary in order to tell our first-person accounts. Without that, it's all theoretical. We need the real-life experiences told so officials and other people we know do not rely solely on theory, myths, or stereotypes," end quote. Government, health authorities, other officials all consider policy direction that affect us directly or even indirectly. And if they don't hear from those of us with dementia who will be most influenced by these policies, how will they know their proposal will work? Decision makers may have the best of intentions, but at the end of the day, what sounds good or looks good on paper may in fact not be good. So that's why I continue to sit at the table, not only because it gives me a purpose and keeps me out of mischief, but being there ensures the voice of a person with dementia is heard and considered and heard. Some of the guys in my support group have lost their driver's license. They don't take public transit. They don't use the computer, even though they did when they were working. They have no purpose. And now, 3 of the guys have left my group and are in a day program. I raise my voice for them too, because the phrase, "ignorance is bliss," doesn't apply with us, with me. What does apply to us is the phrase, "nothing about me without me." I recently heard one family ignore Dad the minute he received a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. The man's wife and 3 adult children all talked around him, about him, in front of him. Nothing about me without me. An acquaintance was told he had Alzheimer's. The day before that diagnosis, he handled the money for his golf group of buddies. The day after, he was relieved of that responsibility. In their book, Broadening the Dementia Debate Towards Social Citizenship, Doctors Ruth Bartlett and Deb O'Connor defined social citizenship in part, saying a person with dementia is entitled to experience freedom from discrimination and to have opportunities to grow and participate in life to the fullest extent possible. And they said social citizenship involves justice and the upholding of personhood, rights, and fluid degree of responsibility for shaping events at a personal and societal level. I dare say the men I just spoke about were discriminated against because of their Alzheimer's disease diagnosis, which for me confirms the need for advocacy, for my voice and many others with dementia to take our place at the table, to avail ourselves of the opportunity to grow. And that's the role for conferences like this one, to educate, to display the success stories and the not so successful stories, so those attending gain confidence in moving forward and participating in life to the fullest extent possible. So they realize their own potential after hearing about and meeting others on the same journey. Hearing directly from others is often the biggest confidence builder. If he can do it, so can I. I ended my 2008 speech referring to a report on what was then a new book called The Anti-Alzheimer's Prescription, in which was written, and I quote, "Most people feel that they are victims when it comes to Alzheimer's and memory loss," end quote. And my response to the audience, we need to get out there and tell the world he's wrong. Let's demonstrate our strong desire to be active in advocacy and awareness raising. We are not all victims. We have a life worth living. While it may not be the life we would choose, it's what we have. So you know what? We are going to make it ours, and we're going to make it worthwhile. We're going to make our mark in the world and be proud of what we are and who we are. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my view of social citizenship. Thank you.